Welcome to Active Learning, from Introduction to Implementation. In this course, we will be exploring how active learning strategies can be a powerful item in your teaching toolkit to support student learning. We will look at examples of strategies, specific examples of activities using those strategies, to illustrate how those strategies can be applied, and the application we're going to be looking at is in diverse teaching and learning contexts. Through this course and your work, you'll understand these examples and how to apply what you've learned to develop an active learning activity of your own, which you will post to the course by the end of your time here. In this first module together, we'll consider why active learning is useful. Once we've established a rationale for active learning, we'll look at 3 different examples of active learning strategies. Our goals for this module are that by the end, you'll be able to successfully explain how active learning strategies can engage learners, explain how these strategies can help learners practice and develop skills, and then express your own ideas about the value of active learning in teaching and learning. One way to understand why active learning strategies are valuable is to consider what learners do as they learn. Garrison, Anderson, and Archer proposed this model in 1999 to describe the key elements that together support learner success. In their model, they describe cognitive presence, teaching presence, and social presence within what they call the community of inquiry. This adapted version of the model uses engagement language to build on their work and use their work to describe what learners are doing during the learning process. That is, engaging with content, engaging with other learners, and engaging with the instructor. In addition to the learner's engagement and how that supports their learning, active learning strategies are also a great way to help the learners develop skills. This Skills for Success model by Employment and Social Development Canada defines a number of skills, including creativity and innovation, problem solving, reading, digital skills, collaboration, adaptability, writing, numeracy, and communication. As learners engage with content with one another and with the instructors, they're developing their skills for success. As you will see from the examples that follow, different active learning strategies focus on or prioritize different skills. Muddiest Point is our first example of an active learning strategy. It lends itself to activities where the primary interest is learner-to-content engagement. Once learners have been presented with something new, they can be asked to reflect on it and reflect on their learning with a question about what is muddiest about what they just learned. Something they might feel unsure about or they might feel is unclear. The learners are then given opportunity to respond. Once everyone is asked, everyone is asked to write something down to allow full and simultaneous participation by all of the learners present. For example, after seeing a demonstration, like a new skill in a sport or an art project, learners could be asked to write down what they felt muddiest about in the steps or in the technique they just saw demonstrated. Muddiest Point could be expanded beyond just this learner-to-content engagement to include, for example, learner-to-learner engagement, if learners were instead of writing asked to discuss the steps together, then write down one point that is still muddy. For example, in the case of learners learning how to complete a business plan, a template of the plan might be presented. Learners might discuss it in pairs and then decide together what their muddiest point is. Teacher engagement is all about how the teacher responds to what's been shared or what's been raised. There are lots of ways they could respond, individually with students, with learners, to a group, in writing, orally, however they respond. Teacher engagement is another key strategy for learner success, and here it can be used to help learners gain clarity on whatever they felt was muddy. Muddiest Point activities invite learners to practice their communication skills as they work to take an idea they're unsure about or unclear about and share it with someone else. This may invite them to use a reference to use or to reference some new language, new vocabulary they've just learned as part of describing what they're unsure about, further enhancing their communication skills. The second example active learning strategy we want to talk about is Think, Pair, Share. Think, Pair, Share is an example centered around learner-to-learner engagement. It's about doing more than just asking a question. Once a teacher asks a question, they first give learners time to think about it on their own. Next, learners are given time to pair and discuss their thoughts with an individual or with a small group. This encourages them to bring their own learner personality, their own personal experience to the learning environment. Finally, Pairs or groups are invited to share with others the response. This activity encourages diverse perspectives and ideas to come up and be shared. And as an example context, this could be used in a workplace training where a new process is being discussed or introduced with the team. As the important steps are discussed, individuals could think, pair, share around the table about why the step is useful or necessary or relevant, or any other question like that. This could also be expanded to include learner-to-content engagement if, as learners review a written process, they were thinking about that question. They were thinking about what was unclear, for example, right? Combine it with other strategies. But based on this engagement, if they're looking at a written copy of the process, the learners would be engaging with the content. In addition, instructor-to-learner engagement could be achieved if learners think, then pair share. If after learners think and pair share, the teacher was to provide feedback on the responses. That teacher feedback would increase the instructor-to-learner, the teacher-to-learner engagement in this example. One skill here that is practiced and developed is collaboration, as individuals take turns sharing and actively listening to one another while supporting the common goal of learning something new. The third and final example of an active learning strategy we'll consider is case studies. Case studies involve a significant amount of learner-to-teacher engagement. First, teachers select case studies that they believe will be relevant to the learners in their learning. They then create a case study activity with tasks selected to support student learning toward instructional goals. Finally, teachers coach learners and provide feedback during and after their work with the case. One example could be a lesson on change management for a group of leaders in an organization. Leaders could be given case studies of other organizations undergoing similar changes to the one they are facing. The case studies could explain how the change, how it was managed, and how employees responded. The employees could be invited to consider what the organization should start doing, stop doing, and continue doing to support their employees through this change, the one studied in the case. Case studies could be expanded to also include learner-to-content engagement if used as learners explore, for example, a new resource. In the case of discussing the findings of a report, learners could be given a visual diagram, a chart. And then as they think about the question being posed, they could be marking up this new chart and engaging with the content alongside their case or in the context of their case study. In a different form of engagement, learner-to-learner engagement could be embedded here in case studies by setting up opportunities for learners to discuss a case together or share their findings with other individuals who had looked at other cases. Either way, case studies are a great way to help learners develop and practice their problem-solving skills as they analyze the situation and apply what they've learned to propose solutions. We explored 3 examples of active learning strategies here, discussed some different activities that could be done using each of those strategies. The first reason we explored for using active learning was learner engagement. Using the community of inquiry framework as a model, we described learner engagement in terms of ways they engage with content, engage with other learners, and engage with the teacher. The second reason we explored for using active learning strategies is to help learners develop and practice skills. We use the Skills for Success framework here to define the skills that individuals need to thrive personally and in their work. 3 example active learning strategies were presented. We use them to demonstrate how they can engage learners and how they help them practice and develop skills. Next, in the next module, you'll have opportunity to express your own ideas about the value of active learning strategies. You'll do that in this module. In the next module, you'll move on to take all of this and apply it to begin to implement and begin to design and develop your own active learning strategy or activity you could use in your own teaching and learning context. Thanks.